Hi there, it's Michael Kerr and I'm presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a way more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners to better prepare for the current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, the founder of Kerr Capital, and we advise business owners. Each week I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, including the wins and the losses, and overall their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own small business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard right across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. Good morning and welcome to another edition of Small Business Banter. I'm Michael Kerr, the host of Small Business Banter. In the house with me today is Phil Meddings, and Phil is the Joint Chief Executive of Bintani Australia. He's going to explain what Bintani does, but it's in and around the craft brewing industry. He's also co-owner of Bent Brewing Company in Canberra. He's a non-executive director of another couple of entities, and he's also co-founder of Bay 13 Brewery in Miami, Florida. So it's fantastic to have you in, Phil. Welcome, firstly.
Well, thanks for having us. It's I'm looking forward to this.
Same, yeah. So look, do you want to give us a couple of minutes? That's a pretty extensive CV. And but a heavy involvement in the craft brewing industry, which has been going ballistic for the last 5 to 10 years. So could you just give us a couple of minutes on the portfolio?
Yeah, no problems. Look, started with the family business for me in 2010, but it's a business my dad started in '95 called Bintani, and when he started it, and even up until the point when I joined in 2010, it was a fairly small sort of business supplying ingredients into the breweries, into craft breweries. So that was in 2010. Since that time, quite a bit has happened, including an explosion in craft beer. My dad's retired, and along the way, in between, we've sort of started a whole lot of other, and become involved in a lot of other businesses. Most have sort of got a relationship with craft brewing and beverage and alcohol, I guess, but they're not all ingredients, or they're not all production. So it's been an interesting few years.
Yeah. So that you've gone up and down the supply chain, I guess, because you're in retail with Bent Spoke as an example, and maybe back to supplying and servicing kegs as another.
Yeah, I can give you a bit of a timeline on it if you like.
Yeah, please do.
I mean, we started with the ingredients, and there really weren't many breweries. But as the breweries increased, we supplied more and more. And my dad really sort of put together a fantastic business built around simplicity and, I guess, transparency and honesty with the customers. So.
And off the back of a pretty strong passion for brewing his own beer at home.
Exactly. He was passionate about brewing, which meant that he explored different ingredients. He had his eyes open for different products to sell, and then he looked after the customers. And it was kind of as simple as that. As the industry grew, the business grew, and then other suppliers started coming to us to say, "Can you sell our ingredients?" But probably in around 2011, 2012, I'd come into the business from 10 or 11 years in chartered accounting at KPMG, and I came into the business, and the accounting side of work at Bintani didn't really take up very much time because it was so small. I think I was the sixth employee, number 6, and so we just left a bit of free time to kind of consider other opportunities. And we always get excited about these opportunities, and one day we were talking with a really good brewer up in Canberra called Rich Watkins, and he was working as an employee brewer, and the conversation just started about setting up our own thing, and that took a bit of time to get going. But the brew pub at Bent Spoke opened in 2014, and has just grown enormously since that time, in sort of partnership. So we were still running our ingredients business, but we were heavily involved in the sort of the back office and the strategy side of growing Bent Spoke with Rich and his partner Tracy. So
and Rich was a really highly regarded brewer in his own right.
He was, yeah. He'd been brewing for a long time, and he'd been a long time customer of ours. So we had a great relationship and a lot of sort of shared values and knowledge, and so it was a kind of an easy decision to start this thing together. But I don't think we didn't really know where it would go. It wasn't about a vision of a company of a certain size. It was really just about the excitement of starting something new. There's a few other businesses that we started sort of around the same time. Started a company leasing equipment, leasing beer kegs, stainless steel beer kegs. So started that one in 2012. That business had a requirement to actually repair kegs as well, because a brewery would lease kegs for a while, they would send them back, and we would then need to do a bit of refurbishment, change some of the seals and clean them up. So it kind of led to starting another company in servicing the kegs. So I guess at that point, by 2014,
you're seeing opportunities, and you really, rather than letting them go, you're capturing them and going after them.
Yeah, we did, and I mean, Bent Spoke made sense it was in Canberra, and it was always going to be a separate entity with another partner. But the keg businesses were sort of different from the ingredients business, so we always treated those separately, and they grew life on their own as well. And we've sold both of those keg businesses now, but that has sort of led into an involvement with the Convoy keg business, which you mentioned in the introduction. So.
Yeah, and I think the newest venture is Bay 13 in which is an Australian themed brew pub in Florida.
Yeah, so Bay 13's pretty awesome.
Iconic name.
Yeah, well, it's the larrikin element, isn't it? It's kind of goes well with the concept, the idea of drinking beer. So, and summer, I guess, warm weather. So, I worked with a guy called Nick Sharp at KPMG, and he ended up in Miami through another job, and we just stayed mates from sort of 2005 onwards. And at one point, it just came up about a brew pub, and the idea with it is brew. So we firstly, taking a step back, we travel to America all the time with work, and we obviously spend a lot of time in the brew pubs over there. And I just sort of felt that there was a bit of a gap for an Australian style brew pub. And I've had this question asked a few times, like, what is an Australian style brew pub? And what we see in Australian style brew pub and why it's different to an American is because we feel we're offering customers a better food experience, high quality beer, and American brew pubs have very high quality beer generally as well. So that's not a differentiator, but we want to do beers showcasing Australian ingredients. We want to have a better food offering, so less burgers and more Australian sort of cafe, a little bit healthier, a bit less cheese maybe.
Right. And that's something Australia's highly regarded for, isn't food?
Yeah,
quality
it is,
produce.
Especially the cafe and coffee kind of. I think if you look around Melbourne cafes and you look at sort of the quality of the fit outs, the quality of the design of the menus, and the experience for someone going out for breakfast, this mix of a really informal but high quality experience, and that's kind of what we wanted to do at Bay 13 in America, is bring the Australian fun, informality, but at a high quality level, and see whether it resonated, see whether it actually does provide something different.
So it's a combination of offerings, not just, beer's pretty competitive and pretty personal, I guess. And so the food offering is something that you say is a differentiator. It looks like also that you've, in partnering again with someone on the ground, as you did with Rich in Canberra, that seems to be a part of your model. Because it's a long way to
it's
Florida.
ended up that way. I mean, that's, I guess, kind of how you can. It's hard to. I mean, we're all the same in that we literally can't do everything ourselves. So partnering with somebody is the way we've been able to expand and grow. And it's not about growing; it's about pursuing interests. Really, we've been able to pursue things that we think are fun and good opportunities by partnering with people.
Yeah,
it wasn't always that way, but that's how we've ended up.
Yeah. So in between Bay 13, what was the last great in inverted commas Aussie beer that wasn't all the way back to Foster's, was it?
In the US?
Yeah.
That's great Aussie beer.
There's been some really high-end coffee pioneers, from Australia go to America and paved the way, but, are you, out there on your own in terms of an Australian-led owned business in the US?
I would say we are. I would say we definitely. I'm not aware of anyone doing what we're doing. The only sort of personal whatever that's come close is Little Creatures. Little Creatures opened a brew pub in San Francisco in around 2019.
Yeah.
But Little Creatures is owned by Lion, obviously, and Lion purchased a really big craft brewery in the US called New Belgium, and then they've rebranded their Little Creatures brew pub. Aussie Bastions now.
Let's say Bay 13 is remains the the carrying the flag because we're pretty pro Aussie, aren't we? Hey, I just want to go back on a couple of things, Phil. It's an amazing mix of businesses and up and down the supply chain. Craft brewing has been going ballistic for the last 5 or 10 years. But for you personally, you did, I think you left a successful career in chartered accounting with one of the big four firms, KPMG. And so what, for you personally, what was the motivation to go into the family business, and what did you bring from that professional experience to a small business that was maybe good and maybe, not so good?
In hindsight, when I look back on it, being at KPMG was probably the mismatch for me. I ended up in chartered accounting by following I did commerce at university because I liked business. From then on, it was really about kind of taking the steps that are put in front of you. So really not really thinking it through too much. So I ended up, I did commerce, kept things general and did accounting, and then went into a Big Four. Was lucky enough to sort of get taken on into a Big Four firm with pretty average uni results. And then I kind of got into this vortex of doing chartered accounting, and it wasn't really whatever was my passion or what drove what I got excited about. What I was excited about always has been business and just the kind of the enjoyment that comes out of planting that seed and watching something grow. I know it's a bad cliche, but that's exactly how I feel about businesses. So
yeah, it's a lesson there for for a lot of younger professionals or younger people generally that that it's pretty hard to say whether that experience is invaluable, but maybe it you earlier might have been better for you just to get out of the.
Well, I mean, I had business ideas. I was messing around with a couple of people looking at. A funny one is when I was probably 18 or 19, there used to be a Gilbey's gin distillery in Moorabbin, and they closed this big, beautiful site, and we saw an opportunity to do a climbing gym. And so, these 18-year-old guys ringing up landlords and trying to sort of get a climbing gym together. And I wasn't really built for rock climbing, but I could see it as a growing sport and a growing a good opportunity. And we never got it off the ground, but I mean that was pretty.
It does an indicator of your real inner passion for business and opportunities. To see that. Just by the way, on today's edition of Small Business Banter, we're talking with Phil Meddings, who, amongst other things, is the Joint Chief Executive of Bintani Australia. Sorry, Phil, I cut you off there about that potential business opportunity around climbing. And
oh yeah, look, no, I think you talked about KPMG and what I got out of it. There's no doubt that working in an environment like KPMG, or a chartered firm, kind of changes your horizons. It shows you what's possible, and in those firms, you work with so many interesting businesses that all have a different story. They have a different starting point, a different end point. Some go well, some go poorly. You meet different people, but sort of when I came to Bintani, the thing that was very helpful was this was two things. Probably the horizon, like sort of seeing what you can do and what can be done, and not having a low approach, not having a sort of a low ambition, but having quite big ambitions with where you can take something. And secondly, you're sort of dealing with banks, and you've got a familiarity, a degree of familiarity with banks, lawyers, financiers, those sorts of things that just makes it a lot easier to you've read lease agreements, you've read banking documents, and some of those things can be quite a barrier. Once they're not second nature, but once some of the fear factors taken away, that you don't even think about them again. But I have seen people that's quite intimidating and quite a barrier to get through some of those structural things.
Yeah, and it's you become familiar. The big difference, of course, is that you're putting your family's money, your money, your family's money, into a venture, and so maybe you read those documents with a little bit more intensity, when you're personally on the line.
Yeah, I think you do. I think you definitely do. I mean, I think you do everything. We certainly didn't start with any money at all, and
right.
And just cautiously and carefully went from one thing to another. So
right.
We've never taken. Yeah, I mean that's probably another part of now. Now I look at how other people start businesses and how they go from step 1 to step 3 to step 5. I feel as though in my pathway's been a lot more incremental. It's been step 1, step 1.5, step 2. It's been a little bit of a slower build, and it's one of the things I kind of I think about now quite a bit is the different approaches to business. Some people are very bold, and I think what I'm talking about really is are prepared to incur operating losses and to fund losses for a period of time to grow scale and to get their business going. My experience wasn't, and my kind of natural inclination was a lot more start smaller, prove the growth, see revenue growth, see profitability, and kind of grow more slowly and more cautiously. And I don't think either approach is wrong. I think there's pitfalls and strengths to both. So now I try to learn a bit from taking a few more calculated risks, I guess. But
yeah, and you're still operating as a family. Like there's you work. I mean, you said your dad's retired from the business, but he was. That's only quite recently. Your brother works in the business, so you operate still as to some degree in these ventures as a family unit who runs a couple of businesses. Does that?
Yeah. That's. I don't know whether probably every family business is unique in the way they run. I certainly think I feel like the way we run's unique. Started working. Okay, so I always. From day dot, I was talking to my dad about business. I was going to, I don't know how far back to go here, but we were, before any of the ingredients business even started, there was a business opportunity in China that never came up, and that was when I was in midway through high school. So it's always been about that. But joining the family business in 2010 really kind of put us all together, and the three of us, my dad, my brother, and myself. My brother's very close in age to me. We all had complementary but different skills, and importantly all sort of shared a very, very common set of values and understanding. So we've got very different approaches to things, and as I said, different skill sets, but that shared understanding and value set meant that we were like some sort of three-headed beast. We could handle a lot more breadth of undertakings because there was really three of us working together.
It's quite. It is, as you said. Family businesses or small businesses generally all can have different ways of operating. You talk about values, and I think that's so critically important that you have a shared set of values to guide the decisions you make. But to operate now for that length of period and go through the ups and downs, no doubt, of building out those businesses, is it kind of means that you've got a formula that works pretty well for yourselves.
Well, just interestingly on that, like my dad retired probably a year ago, but with COVID, he wasn't in the office really at all from early last year. So it's getting on more towards 18 months. He went with his retirement and having not having the contact with the business. It's kind of shown a need for my brother and I to reinforce the values and keep, because we do have different approaches, and my old man's sort of older than me, obviously, so he's got a different presence in the office from what my brother and I do. So I think some of those sorts of changes mean that you might have shared values, but you don't. You actually have to be conscious of the need to have them flowing through your business at different times and push them through at different times. Sometimes they're very obvious and everybody's on board. At other times, you can either hire a couple of people that don't quite get it, or you can take your foot. You can sort of lose focus on making sure people are kind of living the values that have got the business to where it is. So we kind of had a bit of that lately.
Yeah, well, it's never set, right? It's never, you've got to constantly evolve, and as a pushing into America is a incredibly fascinating step for you. And I just wanted to cover off a couple of things where we could probably, we could definitely continue to chat for many more minutes, but I want just personally for you. Your when you there's a lot, you take on a lot as co-chief executive. Who do you look at outside of the business for who do you admire as business leaders, and why, to guide you through a fast growing group of businesses and in a fast paced industry?
There was very, very strong leaders at KPMG, both probably more external to the business than at KPMG. Since I sort of started in the craft and small business and family business area in 2010, there's been less of that type of kind of mentor leader that I really learn or consciously listen to and learn from. But probably recently I've been on a board with a couple, like a very interesting board. I think the boards that I'm on are teaching me a lot at the moment, right. Because there's different personalities on there, and there's different ways that the boards themselves work. One of the guys runs a company, runs this keg business, and he's probably got that different approach that I was talking about with a bit more risk taking and. Amongst other things, I think I do admire the way he's grown businesses and learn a bit from him. So,
we recently interviewed Louise Brockman from the Advisory Board Centre, and we're just talking about the critical importance, particularly at the smaller end of small business, to engage with people outside of the family unit or outside of the day-to-day business management team, to bring in some external, advice or counsel or perspective, and it doesn't, so I think the growth and use of advisory boards for small business is a real area of that I'd encourage if you've got an eye to grow your business, and some businesses are happy just being where they are, and that's wonderful. But the use of boards, and for you personally, it really does give you, a range of new experiences, meeting new people. So that's I guess I'm also was keen to just close out with a little bit of a commentary from you on where to for the craft brewing industry in Australia and maybe America then, because we've It's been explosive. Where to, Phil? Is it gangbusters, or is it maybe starting to top out a little?
It's an irreversible trend. It'll keep growing. It'll keep growing for some time yet. I think people want to know where their products are coming from. I think taste is something that you generally don't wind back once you've explored broader flavours and worked them into your lifestyle. It doesn't mean that a basic lager is going to go out of fashion or not exist, but it does mean that with the breadth of beers that the craft industry is producing, there's more and more beers that fit moments in your life. Winter stouts and porters and sour beers for refreshment, and I think that doesn't go backwards.
Yeah, right. So does it start to parallel the wine and matching with food, and you talked about that in Bay 13. Is that the next evolution, if you like? Because there's so many. You walk into a brew pub or a bottle shop that has it's an extraordinary range of beers. So yeah, so you all growth ahead for craft beer. Hey Phil, look, we have unfortunately run out of time. I really appreciate you in a very busy business life that you have sparing some time for us. It was a great chat. Thank you very much, Phil Meddings from Bintani Australia, amongst other things.
No problem at all, Mike. Really enjoyed the chat.
All right, Phil, you take care. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories and their experiences. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or just to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com or find Small Business Banter on Facebook or Instagram. It'd be really great to have you tune in at the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.